Let's take a look at the gospel. That's confessional data. Let's look at the narrative data. Briefly, from the narrative data are the four gospels. They all have accounts of the resurrection. And then the Acts of the Apostles has information about Jesus appearing after the resurrection. Here's 6 key points. You'll see some similarity with Paul, but then some differences, different emphases. The first point is Christ, the resurrection was in the physical order. This is really clear in the Gospels. Jesus is like eating fish with people and having him like put their hand in his rib cage. And in the Gospels, he's constantly saying, "I'm not a ghost." There's an emphasis on the physical order. The second point is this. Though given point 1, sense experience alone is not enough to experience the risen Christ. For example, in the Acts of the Apostles, you see the disciples on the road to Emmaus. It's not in the Gospel of Luke. I just completely blanked. It's in the Gospel of Luke. I'm sorry. The two disciples at the end of the Gospel of Luke are leaving Jerusalem, and Jesus is walking with them, and they don't recognize him. He's there, but somehow just the historical experience of seeing him is not enough to recognize him. Okay? The third point I want to call dissimilarity. That is, Jesus' resurrected body is not merely resuscitated. How many people does Jesus raise from the dead in the Gospels? Take a wild guess. How many? Yeah, he raises 3 people from the dead in the Gospels, in the narratives that we have. The little girl, who's 12 years old, says, "Talitha kum," give her this girl, Big Mac. And then secondly, Lazarus. And then thirdly, Peter's mother-in-law wasn't dead yet. She just had a fever.
The centurion's servant?
Same girl. It's the little girl. Oh, no, he was sick. The centurion was going to die, but he was sick. The widow at Nain. Remember N-I-N? The widow had a son. And remember, Jesus touches the coffin, or he pops out of the coffin. Okay, those people all died. That's the point here. Jesus was not merely resuscitated to normal biological life. That's dissimilarity. There's something different about this boy after he's crucified and rises from the dead. The fourth point is similarity. He's the same person with the same body. Remember, he shows the wounds, so the Gospels point that out. Again, Paul makes the same point, but the Gospels have a particular emphasis on it. Remember, he calls Mary Magdalene by name. This is also seen in the way the Gospels emphasize Jesus as kind of a friend. Paul doesn't highlight that everybody knew Jesus. For Paul, Jesus is the eschatological king, the Lord of the universe, risen from the dead. But for the Gospels, it's like, we had breakfast with him. There's the emphasis of him as his friend. So 2 different emphases, not contradictory, but 2 different emphases. Fifth point from the Gospels and Acts, the risen Christ is unpredictable. His appearances depend on his own initiative. The disciples can't, to use a technical term, fake the funk. They can't produce that experience. Okay, and that's evidenced by the fact that his visible presence doesn't last long. He appears, says a couple things, and then he's gone. He has breakfast, then he's gone. Okay, and the sixth point, just want to highlight the purposes of his appearances, which Paul doesn't make very clear, but the Gospels make it clear. 2 points. The first purpose of his appearances seems to be to convince the disciples of his new permanent presence in them and with them. To convince his disciples of his new presence in them and with them. And then the second purpose seems to be to send his disciples on mission. To those who, to quote Jesus from the Gospel of John, to those who did not see and believe. That's from John chapter 20, verse 23.